I work in a large mall-based clothing store. I got a new position as the assistant boss. After a few weeks of training, I had to close the store alone for the first time. We did not have many employees, so it was just me and one other person. When I went to the front of the store to organize something, I noticed a man sitting outside and talking on his phone. Nothing unusual occurred, so I simply smiled at him and continued doing my job. A little later, I asked a coworker for assistance in hanging a large signboard. Then, about an hour later, returned to the front of the store and found the same man sitting on a bench. He looked at me and began whispering, but I still heard him. He said, "I might be able to take two. Here comes one." Now I thought he was talking about stealing something. Recently, some people had been taking items from our front tables and fleeing. So I started folding clothes near the front of the store to keep an eye on him. Then he called me. "Excuse me, ma'am. Could you please come here for a moment?" I explained that I couldn't leave the store because I was the manager on duty. But he kept asking, and when I said no again, he explained that he just wanted to show me how nice the banner had up looked. Sensed something was off, so I returned to the store to avoid the man. He stood up from the bench and followed me into the store. He kept talking and looking at things. Fortunately, the big boss arrived to set up the schedule for next week. She is older, bigger, and scarier than me. When the man saw her and realized she also worked there, he left quickly. Told my boss what had happened, and she became very concerned. I stopped a security guard and told him what had happened. He mentioned that they had recently heard about similar situations. Just then, noticed the strange man again and alerted the security guard. Then he went over and spoke with the man. A few minutes later, he returned and said he told the man not to bother anyone, but he couldn't call the cops because there wasn't enough evidence. But, thankfully, I haven't seen the weird man since. This occurred during the winter of 2017, when I worked at a gas station in a small town. I began working early in the morning, but a few days prior, I crashed my car into the side of the road. So I didn't have a car to drive to work until I received money from insurance to purchase a new one. Because my job is only about 1.5 miles from my apartment, I figured it would be a good idea to walk there for now. So I began walking to work in the mornings. The road was smooth, and cars were usually driving down it. However, when I had to start my walk at 4:30 a.m., it was very dark, and I rarely saw any cars on the road. One very cold morning, I began walking to work as I always do. About halfway there, I passed through a wooded area beside the road. There were no street lights, so I used my powerful flashlight to see where I was going, just as anyone would in the dark. I kept shining it around to see what was around me while walking. Then I heard some noise coming from the bushes along the road ahead of me. It felt like someone was watching me. I paused and shone my light on the bush where the noise was coming from. I was startled when a deer appeared out of the bushes. It crossed the road and entered the shrubs on the other side. I told myself not to be afraid because nothing around here could seriously harm me. A little further down the road, I felt as if someone was watching me again, but this time my hair stood up on the back of my neck. Tried to convince myself it was just another deer. Then I shone my light over some bushes and into the trees to my left, about 50 feet behind me. Suddenly, my light shone on what appeared to be someone crouching down, facing a bush with their back to me. At first, I suspected it was a homeless person, but when I came to a halt and pointed my light directly at them, I realized with horror that it was not human. It appeared that whatever it was had no clothes on. Its body had no hair and its skin was extremely pale. Its arms and legs were very long and thin. Standing up, it appeared to be taller than 8 feet. Its fingers were also extremely long and skinny, with sharp black points that resembled claws at the ends. As soon as I shone my light on it, it turned to face me. Its eyes glowed in the dark, similar to those of a cat or a deer. Didn't see its face clearly, but I knew it wasn't a person. When it looked at me, I ran down the road as fast as I could, not looking back. Even with my panicked breathing, I thought I heard something chasing me. Then I noticed car headlights in the distance ahead on the road. I kept running, and the car soon passed me, following behind me and disappearing from view. I couldn't hear anything behind me anymore, so I kept running until I arrived at work. When I arrived, I was huffing and gasping for air, and I explained what had happened to my coworker. He appeared more concerned than surprised, and said another coworker had recently seen the same creature, describing it exactly as I had, down to the last detail. I will never walk to work in the dark again. I'll just call Uber or something from now on. I'm a 34-year-old female who has been working at the library for several years. The library is beautiful. Half of it is made of glass, and the other half is painted in soothing wooden tones. Prior to this incident, it was one of the best jobs I'd ever had. So we are open from 8:00 a.m. to 8:00 p.m. Then, before leaving, I organize the books until 10:00 p.m., when only one person is usually required to stay. Since I am single and bored at home, enjoy volunteering to stay and organize books. One Thursday, it was very quiet, and when 8:00 arrived, I was still there as usual. My coworker was having a party, so he had to leave. I said goodbye to him and began organizing books. So I just picked up the box containing all of the return books, placed them where they belonged, and double-checked the computer system to ensure they were also checked in. Normally, it's simple. I just scan the book back in, but our scanner has been broken for a month. It's funny how a nice-looking library like ours has a broken scanner that the city refuses to replace. Well, it did not bother me. If I had to stay a few minutes after 10, that was fine. I'd still get the organizing done. So as I check the bin I just brought to the front desk, I hear the front doors open and close. When I forget to lock the doors and someone walks in, I simply say, "Sorry, we're closed." People are fine with it and do not cause any trouble. But when I looked up at the front doors, there was no one there. It appeared that the door opened by itself, or that if someone did come in, they rushed past before I could look up, which was unusual. So I figured someone must have opened the door before noticing the hours printed on it, and then they realized we were closed, so I ignored it and continued working. But I remained vigilant in case anyone attempted to sneak in. Local junior and high school students frequently attempt to sneak in and stay overnight. I'm not sure why they kept doing it, but adults occasionally hide behind Walmart shelves and spend the night without employees' knowledge. However, the library stands out in that most of these stores, I believe, are open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. But the library closes at 8, and if a child refuses to leave, I must remain until they do. Few minutes after 10 p.m. is acceptable. However, arguing with teenagers until 11 p.m., when the police arrive, is not. Anyway, I begin sorting the books into various groups. Then I heard footsteps in the nonfiction section. I attempted to look over, but a decorative pillar obscured my view. The nonfiction section is on the ground floor and has many aisles, but it didn't take me long to go through them all. Nobody was present, so I returned to the front desk. But just before I sat down, I heard a different noise, one that made me a little nervous, like someone quietly talking very quickly. They did not want to be heard, but neither did they want to keep it to themselves. That's when I began to suspect there might be a ghost. But my coworkers hadn't told me any ghost stories yet, so I never suspected the library was haunted, and I wasn't ready to believe it now. Don't get me wrong. Enjoy ghost stories and used to watch Ghost Hunters a lot. I approached the nearby wall and turn on the lights upstairs. I call out, informing anyone who may be present that the library is closed. I wouldn't even need to walk with them. Even if the doors are locked, you can still leave from the inside, which is quite convenient. I called out twice, but no one answered, until I reached the top of the stairs and heard fast footsteps running away from me. It sounded like they were coming down the stairs on the other side. I walked slowly between the aisles up here, checking each one as I had before, and then moved on to the other set of stairs. After not finding anything strange or unusual up here, I took the next set of stairs back down to the ground floor. But on the second step from the top, I noticed something on the floor. I got a shiver down my spine when I realized it was blood. I wondered if this was really happening and what it could be. The break-in? Vengeful ghost? Or was it just someone's nosebleed from earlier in the day that they neglected to clean up? But I couldn't help but notice how fresh the blood looked. I thought to myself, returned to the front desk, and issued another warning. But again, there was no response, so I sat down at the desk and finished sorting the books into categories before returning them to their proper shelves. Social studies, languages, science, and other interesting topics. I checked my computer again, where I had just typed a list of the returned books. When everything looked good, I clicked to confirm the entry. Almost immediately after I clicked, the whispering began again. This time, the whisper came from behind me. I quickly jumped up and turned around to look behind me. All I saw was a large, dark shape moving from one aisle to another. It clearly resembled a man, a large, heavy man. I stumbled backward and reached for the phone on the desk. I found it, held it to my ear, and then turned around to call 911. Someone responded, and I informed them that there was someone in the library who might be dangerous, and was not leaving. They wanted me to stay on the line, but because the desk phone was connected by a cord, and I didn't want to be stuck in one place, I told them I'd hang up and wait at the front door. Then I went to the wall-mounted light switches and turned on all of the building's lights. I stayed at the front desk even though I should have gone outside. But why did someone sneak into here like that? Why were they muttering like that? All of this made me feel like I needed to be afraid of something. Just as I was about to convince myself to go outside, even if it meant taking my time, I heard more whispering. This time, it was coming from directly above me, on the second floor. And this is important to know because of what happened next. Suddenly, something heavy fell on top of me. I was pressed to the floor and experiencing a wave of pain throughout my body. Screamed and managed to break free. Then I turned to see what had hit me. When I looked, there was a large man standing there. He shook and mumbled to himself, saying things that made no sense. Instead of looking at me, he kept looking around in all directions before returning to me, as if confused. This man appeared mentally ill, but that didn't matter to me because I was in grave danger. Pain continued to flow through my body. I managed to get up and run for the side door. I pushed the door open and ran outside, almost crashing into a police officer by mistake. Told them about the man inside, who attacked me and appeared insane. I let them in with my keys, and they searched everywhere. They searched both floors, every aisle, and every corner, but they only found a blood spot on the step I noticed. I was scared and uneasy for a few days, whether at home or elsewhere. That man, whoever he was, seriously messed with my head. After the police searched the area, one of them stayed outside with me. He called an ambulance and then attempted to reassure me by sharing his thoughts on the person who attacked me. Even thinking about it terrified me. We live in a nice town, and I never imagined people like that would be here. Suppose I was more protected than I realized. The library gave me 1 week of paid time off while I tried to get better. Still worked there, and we never heard anything else about the man, so he was never caught. However, for about a year, we had a police officer with us at the library. I believe that is the only reason I did not quit. This occurred 10 years ago, when I began working in the IT department's call center. Most people worked in sales, management, or other customer service positions. Our department was the only one in the company that provided customer service. It was strange, but I was the only woman present, so I wanted to demonstrate that I could do the job. After training, was given 2 options for my night shift. Work from 9:00 a.m. to 5:00 p.m., 5 days a week, or 2:00 p.m. to midnight, 4 days a week. I chose the latter shift because I believed that working 10 hours per day was worth having 3 days off rather than 2. However, no one in any other department worked after 6:00 p.m., so I was the only person in the building from that time until midnight. This made me nervous, but once they left, the doors were locked, so I felt safe. Around 8:00 or 9:00 p.m., things would slow down significantly, and I would receive fewer phone calls. We provided internet services to businesses, but the majority of our customers were not working at the time. Some nights, between 8:00 p.m. and midnight, I received only 2 or 3 calls, so I always brought something to do at work. I would occasionally go down to the basement to get snacks or drinks from the vending machines. This part has always made me very nervous. In that section of the basement, there were windows that looked out to the back of the building, where there was nothing but forest. Always made me uneasy, but I would go down there if I truly needed something. I could forward my work phone to my cell phone in case I received a call. Then, one night at work, I was exhausted and struggling to stay awake, so I went to the basement to get a soda from the vending machines. As I walked past the windows, I thought I saw something move in the corner of my vision. It wasn't uncommon to see deer or other animals in the surrounding forest, so I assumed that was all there was. I was getting my drink from the machine when I heard a loud bang, as if something had hit one of the windows. It scared me, so I grabbed my drink and ran upstairs. When I returned to my seat, I felt very nervous but tried to relax. Kept looking around the windows from my desk, but all I saw was darkness. When I finally calmed down, I heard a noise near the front doors. I looked over and saw a tall man with his hands around his face, attempting to see inside. I ducked, but he made eye contact with me just as I vanished from sight. I could hear him trying to open the doors, but they were, as usual, locked. When he began banging on the door repeatedly, I decided to call the police and dialed 911. I described everything to the dispatcher. Then suddenly, I heard a loud crash. Crouched down and continued to speak with the dispatcher, telling them what was going on as the noise continued, and they assured me that they were doing everything they could. When you're in that situation, every second feels like eternity. Had no idea how long a few minutes could feel until then, waiting for the police. The dispatcher instructed me to check the front door again. I reluctantly looked up and saw that a large portion of the top of the glass had been broken, but it did not appear that anyone could get through it. Soon after, I heard sirens and noticed flashing lights. It was the best feeling ever when the police arrived at the front door. Thanked the dispatcher and concluded the call. Then I unlocked the door and spoke with the police. The man had already fled before the police arrived. They believed he heard the sirens and ran through the woods to escape. We contacted the business owner and decided to close for the night. There were numerous discussions among my coworkers about who the man was and what his intentions were for attempting to break in, but nothing was ever proven.